I clicked apply on that ad. Of course I did. It was 4 a.m., the gray light was starting to come through my one window, and I felt like I was the only person awake in the world. It was just a simple, clean-looking website, no company logo, just text. It asked for my name, my email, and had one big empty box that said, "Tell us why you feel lost." I poured my whole pathetic life into that box. I wrote about Chester calling me Laura. I wrote about the cold grease smell that sticks to your clothes. I wrote about my empty notebook. I wrote about feeling like a ghost. I hit send and just stared at the thank you screen. I didn't hear anything back for a week. I figured it was just one of those weird data harvesting scams. I tried to forget it. I went back to the data entry job, back to being Laura. Then I got fired. It was from the data entry job. Chester, the Laura guy, actually used my real name, which was the first shock. He called me into his little glass-walled office. He didn't look at me. He just stared at his monitor like he was reading a script. "Layla," he said, "your output metrics are lagging. You're at a 1.5% deficiency against the team average." 1.5%. I'd been typing too slow. I'd been a 1.5% bad machine. He said they were moving in a new direction and streamlining the workflow, which I knew meant they finally bought the software that could do my job. I was being replaced by a script, the ultimate "you're replaceable." I didn't say anything. I just packed my one coffee mug and the 2 pens I liked into a little cardboard box and walked out. I didn't go home. I couldn't. I just walked. I ended up in that little public park near the office, the one with the broken fountain and the sad, patchy grass. I sat on a bench, holding that stupid box, and just cried. Not like sobbing, just the quiet, hot, awful kind of crying where the tears won't stop rolling and you feel like you're dissolving. That's the sound of someone who has just been told they are a number. The voice was incredible. It was calm and warm and had this tiny, lovely, gravelly texture to it, like expensive whiskey if whiskey could talk. I looked up. She was sitting on the other end of the bench. She must have sat down while I was busy staring at a pigeon. She was beautiful. Not like movie star beautiful, but elegant. She had to be in her 60s. Her hair was thick and pure silver, piled up in a messy, artistic way. She wore all these layers of dark, flowing fabric, linen, maybe silk. And on her wrists, she had at least a dozen heavy silver bangles. They didn't jingle, they just clinked softly. She smelled amazing, like sandalwood and old expensive books. "I'm sorry," she said, giving me a small, kind smile. She wasn't looking at me like I was a freak for crying in public. She was looking at me like she understood. "I don't mean to intrude, but I recognize that look. The world just tried to fold you up and put you in a box, didn't it?" I just nodded. I couldn't really talk. "My name is Eleonora." And I don't know why, I just told her everything. About the 1.5%, about the smiley face logo, about my stupid, empty life goals notebook. She listened. She really listened. She didn't nod and say, "Oh, that's tough," or "You'll find something else." She just watched me. Her eyes were this bright, intelligent blue. When I finally ran out of words, she smiled. "Layla," she said, "my name." She said it like it was important. "You are not a number. You are not a temp. You are an experience. You are unrealized art." They're just too blind to see the canvas. I just stared at her. I felt like I could finally breathe. No one had ever said anything like that to me. Then she said, "You emailed my program, didn't you?" The air went out of my lungs. You're the mentorship program? I am the program. I read every application personally, but yours, Layla, yours was special. She reached into her leather satchel and pulled out a card. It was thick, cream-colored, heavy. It just had her name, Eleonora, and an address. No phone number, no website. "This is my studio. Come by tomorrow, noon. We'll talk about your purpose." I must have looked scared, because she laughed, that same soft, warm sound. "Don't worry, dear. This isn't a job interview. It's the beginning of your real education." I spent that whole night just holding the card. It felt warm in my hand, heavy. I Googled her. Nothing. I Googled the address. It was in the Heights, the old money part of town, where the houses are hidden behind stone walls and huge ancient trees. I should have been terrified. A strange, rich woman who happens to find me right after I get fired, who runs a mysterious program with no digital footprint. It's a horror movie setup. I knew that. But I just kept hearing her voice. "Your unrealized art." The next day I went. I wore the only clean, non-faded black jeans I owned and a shirt I'd ironed. I walked 3 miles because the bus didn't even go up there. The address wasn't an office. It was a house. A mansion, really. It was dark stone, covered in ivy, and set so far back from the road you could barely see it. I felt my stomach twist. I almost turned around. But I thought about Chester. I thought about the 1.5% deficiency. I thought about the cold grease smell. And I rang the bell. Eleonora opened the door herself. She was wearing this long, flowing caftan of dark red silk. She looked like a queen. "Layla," she beamed. "You're punctual. Wonderful. Please, come in." I stepped inside, and that's when I felt the first real cold. The house was silent. Not just quiet, silent. Like a museum after hours. The entry hall was huge, with marble floor that clicked under my worn-out sneakers, and it was filled with art. Massive, gold-framed paintings, life-sized marble statues. But the paintings, they were all of people. Young women, my age, maybe a little older, and they were all naked. It wasn't like the paintings at the City Museum. This was different. The women were posed in chairs on strange velvet couches, staring out of windows, and their faces were completely, utterly blank, empty, just invisible, like they were waiting for someone to tell them who to be. Beautiful, aren't they? Eleonora's voice was right behind me. I hadn't even heard her move. "This," she whispered, "is what one aspects when you stop being a cog and you finally become art." I'm not stupid. I knew the paintings were weird, unsettling, but she didn't lead me to a studio. She led me to a library. It was 2 stories tall, filled with old books, and it smelled like that sandalwood and vanilla. It was the safest, warmest place I'd ever been. We talked for 2 hours, or rather, I talked. She listened. That's how it went for months. 2-3 times a week, I'd take the long walk up to our house. We'd sit in the library and drink tea I couldn't pronounce from tiny hin cups. I'd tell her about my new awful job at a call center. She'd nod and she'd reframe it. The world wants to make you a cog, Layla. It wants to sand you down. Your purpose is to resist. Your purpose is to be real. I soaked it all up. I quit the call center. She gave me a stipend, she called it. A check every Friday, so you can focus on your real work, she said. The work was just talking to her, reading the books she gave me, finding myself. I'd never felt so seen. She remembered things I told her weeks ago. She'd ask about my stupid notebook. She was my mentor, my champion. She was, I thought, my purpose. I was completely dependent on her validation. I needed her to tell me I was special. I'd go home to my damp apartment and I'd hold the check and I'd feel like I had a secret. I was finally becoming someone. Then, one rainy afternoon, she said, I think you're ready, Layla. Ready to create. She told me about her company. She called it atarxia, a state of perfect, serene freedom. She said she ran an art house film company. It's not that, she said quickly, seeing my face. Don't be so conventional. It is vulnerability as a statement. It is the ultimate expression of rejecting the gray, sexless cog in the machine world. It's true art. She said she wanted to produce my art. She wanted me to be her next subject. She told me I had the perfect vulnerability. That should have been the warning. That should have been the screaming alarm. The perfect vulnerability. But all I heard was perfect. I didn't even hesitate. This was it. My calling, my unique identity. I wasn't going to be a temp. I was going to be art. I signed the contract right there in that beautiful, warm library.
The address she gave me wasn't her house. It was a warehouse in the industrial part of town. The part of town that smelled like my old fast food job. Stale grease and diesel fumes. I almost missed it. It was just a gray metal door with no name. My stomach did a little flip-flop, but I just thought, this is it. This is art. It's not supposed to be comfortable. I pushed the door open. The inside was worse. It was freezing cold. It smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. It looked just like the data entry office. A huge, open, gray space. The only difference was that instead of rows of cubicles, there were just lights. Huge, buzzing, fluorescent lights on metal stands, all pointed at the center of the room. There were guys there, a small crew, maybe 5 or 6 of them. They weren't artists. They didn't look like Eleonora. They were just guys in hoodies, drinking energy drinks. They looked bored. They glanced at me when I came in, and then glanced away like I was a piece of furniture they had to move. Like I was Lara. A woman with a headset and a clipboard pointed to a fold-out chair. Wardrobe's over there. You can change behind that screen. Where's this set? I asked. My voice was small. She pointed to the middle of the room. It wasn't a velvet couch. It wasn't a beautiful sunlit window. It was a single, cheap-looking mattress on the concrete floor. The old, cold feeling was back. The 1.5% deficiency feeling. The Laura feeling. This wasn't a calling. This was a job. I have to talk to Eleonora, I stammered, my hands starting to shake. I looked around, desperate. She was my anchor. She would explain this. She would make it warm and safe again. And I saw her. She was across the room, and she wasn't wearing her elegant flowing silks. She was in a sharp black pantsuit. She wasn't looking at me. She was holding a clipboard, a spreadsheet. She was talking to one of the bored-looking guys, pointing at a light and then at her watch. Her voice wasn't warm. It was crisp, efficient. "Eleonora," I said. My voice sounded small. She looked up. Her eyes, they weren't bright blue and understanding. They were just busy, annoyed. She saw me. There was no smile, no "my dear." She just looked at me. And she looked down at her clipboard, and she made a little tick mark with a pen. "Ah, Layla, your hair. Good. We're about 15 minutes behind schedule." That was it. She wasn't my mentor. She wasn't my champion. She was my manager. I wasn't unrealized art. I was human resource. I was an asset. I was the 1.5%. I was Laura all over again. I tried to back away. I can't. This isn't what I thought. She sighed. A short, sharp, impatient sound. "Layla, you signed the contract. It's just a scene. Don't be difficult. We've invested a lot in you. Don't be replaceable." That word, replaceable. She knew. She knew exactly what word to use. The gun to my head. A man I hadn't seen before, the director, pointed at the mattress. "We're ready for you, hun." I looked at the contract in my hand. I looked at the board crew. I looked at Eleonora, who was already checking her watch again. And I just walked to the mattress. What else was I supposed to do? I had nowhere else to go. I don't know how long I was there. Maybe hours. The lights were hot. The mattress was rough on my skin. The men, they didn't talk. They just directed. "Move this way. Turn your head. Don't look at the camera. Nope. Look at the camera." My face was blank. I know it was. I was a ghost again. I was just typing numbers from one spreadsheet into another, but with my body. When it was over, I just lay there. They were already packing up the lights. The buzzing stopped. It was just silent. A woman I hadn't seen before, the one with the headset, came over and handed me an envelope. It had cash in it. A lot, actually. And a release form. I was talent number 9. I sat up. My skin was raw. Eleonora never spoke to me. I saw her leave while I was sitting behind the screen, trying to pull my jeans on over my numb skin. She was on her phone. She looked like she was closing a deal. She didn't look back. I was realized. I had served my purpose. I walked home. It was dark. The 3 miles felt like 100. I held the envelope in my jacket pocket. It felt heavy, like a brick. I got back to my damp, tiny apartment. It smelled like my real life. That's the real terror, you see. It wasn't the cameras. It wasn't the act. It was the silence. It was the moment I realized that my desperate search for a purpose was just a different kind of temp job, a different kind of spreadsheet. I was so afraid of being invisible that I let someone convince me to be nothing, just a blank face in a painting, a number on a spreadsheet, a body on a film reel. I sat on my bed and pulled out my little life goals notebook. I opened it to that empty page. Find a purpose. I guess I did. I was a 1.5% deficiency. I was Laura. I was talent number 9. It was all the same. Eleonora was just a better manager than Chester.
She knew what to call streamlining the workflow. She called it art. I guess I'm art now, but I've never felt more replaceable.
I guess I should start from before I found the program. My name's Layla. I'm 19, and 6 months ago, my life was basically a loop of 3 things. My tiny, damp apartment, the one where you can shower and use the microwave at the same time, and the walls always feel a little wet. My mountain of student debt that I'm deferring, and my job. Job is a generous word. It was a cycle. Mondays, I deliver takeaway on my bike, rain or shine, for some gig app that paid me in peanuts and customer ratings. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I was a data fulfillment associate, which is just a fancy way of saying I sat in a gray, windowless cubicle typing numbers from one spreadsheet into another for 8 hours. My headphones, playing the same 3 true crime podcasts, were my only defense against the sound of 50 other people doing the exact same thing. The tapping of the keyboards, the hum of the fluorescent lights, it was the sound of a waiting room, like we were all just waiting for our lives to start, or end, I don't know. Thursdays and Fridays, I'd do a shift at a fast food joint, the one with the smiley face logo that feels more like a threat. I'd go home and my hair would smell like cold grease no matter how many times I washed it. I wanted to be someone, Not just gig worker 45B or temp. I wanted a calling. I kept this little notebook, a really nice one with a leather cover that I probably shouldn't have spent money on, where I'd write down life goals, but the page was mostly empty. It just had stuff like find a purpose and be good at something and matter. Pathetic, right? But the real crabby part wasn't the low pay or even the polyester uniforms that made my skin itch. It was the invisibility. I'm not being dramatic. At the data entry place, my manager, this guy named Chester, called me Laura for 6 solid weeks. 6 weeks! I never corrected him. I figured, what's the point? I'm not a real person here. I'm just the pair of hands they rented until the new software was installed. I was just replaceable. That feeling, that's the real horror story. Long before the other stuff started. It's this cold, hollow feeling in your stomach. The fear that this is it. That you're just going to cycle through these gray, meaningless jobs forever. That you'll die and the only thing you'll be remembered for is completed 98% of assigned tasks or delivered a burger in under 10 minutes. That's where I was. I was terrified of being nothing. I was desperate. I'd be scrolling through those awful hustle culture blogs and career sites at 3 a.m, just hunting for anything, an answer, a path, a sign that I wasn't just waste. And that's when I found the ad. It was simple. Tucked away on some job board I'd never seen before. It didn't even list a salary. It just said, "Are you lost? Do you want a purpose? Apply for the Mentorship Programme." I know how it sounds now. It screams scam or worse, but you have to understand, I wasn't just looking for a better paying job. I was looking for someone to
tell me I wasn't invisible. And, oh God, they saw me. They really, really saw me.
There are more scares to share. Press the like button and subscribe so you don't miss a single terrifying moment. You're helping me investigate the deepest, darkest corners to bring you stories that haunt your dreams.